Either way, I will no longer be your husband. I can't believe I'm actually sitting here writing this story after having been through such a painful experience. I know there will be those among you who will hate reading this, and there will be those who will love it. So be it. My name is John David Martin, and I'm a policeman. No, that's not quite right. I'm more than a policeman. I'm an investigator with the Tyler County Special Crimes Task Force in Texas. My title is Special Agent in Charge. I'm good at what I do, and I rarely fail on a case assigned to me. I know that sounds egotistical, and in some ways it is, but I am also just stating the facts. I was on one case. It was a hot case. The use of two young girls and the kidnapping of one of them. It made the news, and it will be on people's minds and memories for years to come. Everyone who knows me calls me JD, including my beautiful wife Ellison, Ellie. We have been married for 5 years and have no children. I think our marriage is pretty normal, and most of the time I would call it special. Allie is actually very pretty and sweet. We grew up together and have always been good friends, and it just grew into love and eventually engagement and then marriage. She was always the best thing that happened to me, and a lot of good things happened to me. Bill Jacobs, my boss, was the director of our task force, and years ago he developed a sympathy for me and my work. Because of that, I've had every opportunity for advancement, and I haven't missed any of them. I am 32 years old and second in command on the task force. I know that had a lot to do with Bill's support, but I also earned it by doing a great job. A year ago, Bill called me into his office and told me that a double use had occurred and that one of the girls was in the hospital and the other had been kidnapped. The girls were sisters, Mary and Janice Schindler. Mary was 16 years old and Janice was 17. According to Mary, their uncle Josh Schindler picked them up from school and took them to his lair. She said he and his friend Garvey Smithson used them repeatedly. Mary was in pretty bad shape emotionally and physically, and the two men decided to take her to the hospital and leave with Janice. Both men had always been a little unstable, but had never done anything like this before. Bill knew he didn't need to ask me to take the case, but he did. He told me that he felt that if anyone could find Janice and arrest Josh and Garvey, it would be me. I, like everyone else, was sick of the facts, so I agreed to take the case. I took Gina Darling, one of our staff members who is paired with me most of the time, and drove to the hospital to meet with Mary. Gina does a fantastic job, and I trust her with my life. I knew she would be invaluable in talking to Mary. Mary's condition stabilized, and she was ready to testify with all the details she could remember. We, well, mostly Gina, carefully guided her through the whole ordeal, gathering as much information as we could without upsetting the young girl any more than she already was. She was incredibly brave and was able to tell us everything. When we were done, I told Mary that we would do everything we could to find Janice and bring her uncle and his friend to justice. I never make promises because you never know for sure what you can do, but I wanted to make a promise to this girl. I think she knew I would give it my all. Gina and I worked tirelessly on this case. We worked 18 hours a day for 3 days straight. In short, I was obsessed with the case, as was Gina. I'm sure this is where the cracks in my relationship with Ellie began. She complained to me that I was working too much. She complained that I was spending too much time with Gina. I looked at her as she trashed me and couldn't believe that this was my lovely wife. I told her there was a scared and abused 17-year-old girl who was counting on me to find her before they killed her, and I'll be damned if I was going to relax until I found her. I guess I pretty much told Ellie to get over it and stop being so selfish. Well, on the 4th day, we had a break. Someone spotted Garvey in Creighton, a small town on the border of our county. He went into a grocery store to buy some supplies and was seen by someone who recognized him. There were several pictures of Josh and Garvey in the papers, but not everyone had seen them yet. We were lucky this guy saw the news. Several SUVs with officers had pulled into Creighton, but when we got there, Garvey was nowhere to be seen. Presumably, he had just left town and headed south. I knew this part of the county pretty well and devised a plan for how we could systematically check every possible hiding place in the area. We started by setting up a perimeter 10 miles from Creighton. Then we began to spread out to cover the area. Once again, we got lucky. Just 3 hours after Garvey was spotted, we found a shack in the desert, and sure enough, Janice was there. She had been abused and beaten, but she was alive. We were able to call in a medical helicopter, and she was taken to a hospital in Tyler. Unfortunately, Josh and Garvey had somehow slipped past us and were nowhere to be seen. I knew they would be hard to find, but I was determined that they wouldn't get away with it, and I promised myself that I would find them and see them punished for what they had done to those 2 girls. We drove back to Tyler and Gina, and I went to the hospital to check on both girls. Janice had undergone surgery for her lacerations and was recovering. Gina and I just sat and talked about the case, and I made it clear to her that I would find the 2 assholes, even if it was the last thing I would ever do. I could tell that Gina was pretty excited about the whole thing, too, so I gave her a little hug and a smile to reassure her. I told her that we were going to catch these people and bring them to justice. When we had a chance to go inside and talk to Janice, she told us that her Uncle Josh and Garvey had decided to leave her there and were going to go to hard places, as they put it. She thought she heard them say something about South Texas, but she wasn't sure. Aside from the details of the use and kidnapping, she couldn't have been of more help in finding the 2 men. We were beyond relieved that both girls were safe and that they would recover soon. I know they would need extensive counseling and continued support from their friends and family, but I was confident that they would be okay. On the last day of that week, I promised them that I would find their uncle and his friend and bring them here. I know I shouldn't have promised them, but I was sure I would succeed. I think that's where the story really begins. I was still obsessed with finding these 2 men. I don't apologize for that, but it's true. I spent most of my time working on the case. I followed trails that others thought were cold. I wanted justice, and I didn't want to break my promise to Mary and Janice. Needless to say, things got worse at home. Ellie kept telling me that it was foolish of me to work so hard on the case. Both girls had been found, and both were doing better. I kept telling her that bringing Josh and Garvey to justice would help in the ultimate healing of these 2 teenagers, and she kept telling me that I should leave it at that. I worked on the case for 5 weeks, and our relationship grew more strained each day. Then we caught our final breakthrough on the case. It was Tuesday morning when I got word that assholes had been arrested in Lake Charles, L.A., on a DUI charge the night before, and the arresting officer was a cousin of the police chief in Beaumont, Texas. Over the past 5 weeks, I had contacted the Beaumont police chief, one Manny Grayson, many times because I was following all the leads down south. He let me know that they were in custody in Lake Charles and would be held for the maximum number of days to give us time to consider extradition. In 2 days, all the paperwork to extradite the 2 men from Louisiana to Texas was processed, and I made arrangements to pick them up on Friday. I was going to drive to Beaumont, and Manny, Gina, and I were going to drive to Lake Charles and bring the prisoners back to Texas. I figured the trip would take me about 5 hours each way, so I planned to leave around 4 a.m. so we could pick up Josh and Garvey by 10 a.m. and be back in Tyler by 5 p.m. When I got up in the morning and was ready to leave, I leaned over Ellie and kissed her forehead. I said, "Goodbye, dear. When I get home tonight, this will all be over, and I will make it up to you for all the time I spent on this case." Her answer was less enthusiastic than I expected when she said, "Well, don't be in a hurry to come back because of me, JD. I'm sure I'll find something to occupy myself with until you get back. I've been on my own for the last 6 weeks, so this is nothing new." That was as cold as she'd been acting to me the whole time. I knew now that I hadn't paid enough attention to her, but I thought she knew how much I loved her and that it was only temporary. I thought she would be beyond thrilled, but all I heard was sarcasm. I knew I would have to do a lot to make it up to her, and I was more than willing to do it. I missed her too, but this case was very important to those girls, to our town, and to me. I would make it up to her. When I left the house, I was in full gear. I had everything I needed to bring those assholes back to justice with the death penalty. I arranged for Gina to come with me, as I knew this case was special to her, too. So I stopped at the police station and picked her up as we had agreed beforehand. We drove in silence for about 2 hours, both pondering our own thoughts on the events of the previous day. I glanced at her a couple times and she was deep in her thoughts, so I said nothing. Suddenly, the silence was broken by the ringing of our phone. Gina picked it up and listened for a minute, then held it out to me, saying, "It's the chief." "It's JD, I said. "What's up, Chief?" "JD, pull over so we can talk," he replied. I found a place to pull off the road, and Bill told me that Louisiana had rescinded the extradition order. Apparently, an enterprising ADA had gotten the idea to run a DNA comparison on Josh and Garvey, and had gotten the information on the unsolved use and murder 8 months earlier. Since they had a murder along with the use, it was decided that Louisiana would prosecute first, and therefore we couldn't take them back to Texas with us. While Gina and I were not happy about not getting justice in our own jurisdiction, we both realized that their case had the greatest potential for the death penalty. In Texas, because there was no murder, we would probably only be able to put them away for life. We reluctantly agreed to leave the current prosecution to Louisiana. We didn't really have a choice. They had these assholes and we didn't. Nevertheless, I talked to Manny on the phone to be sure he would inform the Louisiana court system that the two should be held without bail, since they were clearly ready to flee and were facing additional criminal charges in Texas. He assured me that he would contact his cousin and that they would not be released. When all the talking was over, we turned around and headed back to Tyler. Bill told us to take some time off since there was no immediate investigation, now that Josh and Garvey had been apprehended. On the way back, we stopped for breakfast, and I dropped Gina off outside her house around 11:00 a.m. and headed home. When I got home and opened the garage door, there was someone else's car parked in my spot. I know that a stranger's car is always parked outside the poor guy's house, but this was the truth. It was a bright red Mustang, and I thought I knew whose it was. It was someone named Billy Marconi, the local tough asshole. I had a very bad feeling in the bottom of my stomach, of course, and before I even entered the house, I felt the rage building up inside me. I knew what I was going to find, and I knew I wasn't going to like it. I quietly entered through the garage into the utility room, and from there I went through the kitchen, hallway, and up the stairs to the bedroom. There was no evidence around, as you might expect, no shoes or piles of clothes, but as I climbed the stairs I heard them in the master bedroom. "Oh my God, Billy, you make love to me so well, each time seems to get better than the last," Allie was saying. "JD loves me, and he would never make me feel like a cheater, but I love it when you use me." "Just make love to me," she interrupted. As I walked down the hallway to the bedroom, I could feel the blood pounding in my head, and I knew I was pretty much out of it. I reached for my gun and was about to pull it out of its holster when my hand caught the stun gun that every officer carries when transporting prisoners. It was probably a good thing my hand touched it because there's no telling what I would have done with the gun. When I looked into the room, I saw Allie having sex with Billy. I quietly walked into the room with the stun gun in my hand, managed to stand right behind him and hit him right in the ass and balls. He collapsed onto Ellie's back with a rock, and when she threw him off of her, I hit her too. When they both passed out, I pulled out one set of handcuffs and handcuffed Ellie to our bed. There was no way she would be able to get away from me or stop me from doing what I was going to do to Billy. I then cuffed Billy and dragged him by his feet out of the bedroom down the hallway to the basement door. I think he hit his head a couple times rolling down the stairs, but I really didn't care. I handcuffed him with his arms around one of the support beams, blindfolded him, and gagged him. By this time, he was starting to come to his senses again, so I let him. "You lost your mind when you decided to make love to a policeman's wife. I'll be back to take care of you a little later, Billy. Don't go anywhere," I told him with an evil laugh before I tasered him again. I went back into the bedroom and sat down in the chair next to the bed. Ellie was crying quietly, and my heart ached. But at that moment, my anger over what I had discovered was stronger than my compassion. I pulled out the stun gun and placed it on the bed in full view of her. "Allison," I said, "I have some questions for you, and you better answer them honestly. If you don't answer honestly, I will use the stun gun on you over and over again until I know the truth. I'll know it's the truth if you and Billy give me the same answers." So here are the questions I asked her. How long have you and Billy been having sex? How many times have you been together? Where have you met to have sex? Does anyone else know that you've had sex with Billy? Do you like sex with him more than with me? Those were her answers. Today is the only time I've ever had sex with Billy. Just this one time. Just here, this one time. No one else knows. And no JD sex with him was better than with you. Only I've heard her say before. Every time seems to get better than the last time, and, oh God, yes, Billy. You know how to make me feel like a total cheater, and I love it. JD loves me, and he would never make me feel like a cheater. But I love it when you use me. Just make love to me. So I knew she was lying to me, and I told her so. Allison, those answers are not the truth. I warned you what lying to me would lead to. I picked up the stun gun and gave her a full charge again. When she came to her senses, I told her, "I'm going to talk to Billy, so while I'm gone, you'd better think of the right answers. I'll be back." I took the stun gun with me and headed for the basement. I knew almost exactly what was going to happen when I asked Billy the same questions. I knew he'd lie, and I knew I'd hit him a couple times. Believe me, I hoped he would. I growled at him. "You asshole, I'll give you 10 seconds to tell me the truth. Next time I'll ask questions or I'll fry your brains with that thing and feed your dead and smoking body to the coyotes in the desert." I hit him full force and several times. His whole body went limp, but twitched a little. Then he came to his senses, and I asked, 10 seconds, Billy. Remember that." "When did it start?" I started counting. 10, 9, 8, 7. When I got to 5, he blurted out, "About 6 weeks ago." "How many times did you and Ellie have sex?" "At least once a week each of those 6 weeks, and sometimes it was twice a week, so maybe 8 or 9 times." "Where did you do it?" "Always here in your bed. When you were going to be gone for a while, she'd call and I'd come over." "Does anyone else know that you made love to my wife?" "No, I kept her to myself. Some of my guys know I'm seeing a woman, but no one knows who or where I go to meet her." "Billy, is there anything else you'd like to add? Is it true this time?" "No, man, it's the whole truth. You know I'm sorry I did it, but you know she was hitting on me and everything, and you know how it is, man. Guys just aren't strong enough to say no." "Big mistake. That dumb asshole should have kept his mouth shut." I told him, "I'll be back later to finish with you, Billy. Don't go anywhere." And I gave him another prolonged taser blow just because he pissed me off. I went back upstairs to Allie and said, "Well, Billy seems to have told the truth. He didn't seem to like the stun gun very much, so he came clean. Are you ready to be honest with me now? Answer the questions, Allison." She couldn't look at me, but she started. "The first time was about 6 weeks ago. We were together once or twice a week during each week, so that's maybe 8 or 9 times. He's always come here and he's always in this bed. Nobody else knows JD. And I really enjoyed the sex because it was so dirty, but I love you and the way you make love to me. JD, I'm so sorry." "Allison, I know you're sorry right now. But what I don't know is if you regret doing it, or if you regret getting caught. And I can never know that for sure, and I can't live like this. I'm going to go and take care of Billy, and then I'm going to come back to let you go." I picked up all of Billy's clothes from the bedroom floor where he had thrown them in his hurry to get my wife into bed. It pissed me off again when I left the room with her. His cell phone fell out on the floor. I noticed it was a BlackBerry, and I had an idea. I threw Billy's clothes on our kitchen table and went out to the garage. With Billy's car keys in my hand, I got into his car and backed into the driveway, closing the garage door behind me. I drove north out of town until I got to Interstate 20 and headed east to Longview, about a half-hour away. I stopped at Walmart on the south side of Longview and bought 2 disposable cell phones. Then I went to 2 other Walmart stores in Longview and bought 2 more phones at each, so I had a total of 6. From there, I drove to the radio store to meet up with an old friend of mine. I sat down and explained my idea to him, and after a careful warning of what I was going to do, he helped me get the rest of the equipment I would need. When I got home, I copied all of Billy's contacts, all of his text messages, and all of his voicemails to one of my new phones. Then, using available hardware and applications, I cloned his phone. Yes, I know it's illegal, but at the time I didn't care. I wanted to keep tabs on this asshole, and I was going to do it. Once I was done with that, I went down to the basement and had a heart-to-heart talk with Billy. I told him, "Billy, you're nothing but a lowlife, and one of these days I'm going to find a reason to humiliate you. I know you're angry, and I know you wish you'd never seen me. But unfortunately, you did. Here's what I expect. You will never say a word about this to another living soul. You don't know Allison, and nothing has ever happened to you here in this house. You will never see or speak to Allison again. I will be watching, and any contact with her will result in your immediate demise. Do you understand me, asshole?" He nodded his head in the affirmative, but I wasn't satisfied. I said, "Are you sure you understand me, asshole?" This time he weakly said, "Yes, I understand you." I released him from the handcuffs and told him, "Then get dressed and get out of my house and never, I mean never, show your face here again." After he left, I reluctantly went up to my bedroom and let Allison go. The bed was a mess, but I really didn't care. I told her, "I'm sorry you had to mess this place up, but it can't be helped. I'll leave it to you to clean up after yourself." Then I threw a few things into my gym bag and told her, "I'm going to go away for a while to think things over. I'll be back to let you know what needs to happen." She tried to grab my arm to stop me and pleaded, "Please, JD, don't leave me. Please stay. I'm so sorry." I said, "Yes, I'm sorry too, but I have to go now, but I'll be back." I checked into a Staybridge Suites hotel near downtown and spent most of Friday and Saturday evening thinking about what I wanted to do in the future. Sunday morning, when I turned on my cell phone again, there were about 20 messages, most from Ellie. I really didn't feel like listening to any of them, so I just scrolled through the ones Ellie had written and listened to the rest. There was one from my boss, a couple from Ellie's sister, and one from Ellie's dad. I immediately called my boss to let him know I was okay and asked for a few days off. He didn't mind me taking a few days off, but told me to stay in touch. I realized that I hadn't eaten since Friday night, and realized that wasn't such a good idea. I went down to the hotel restaurant and ate a decent breakfast. I spent the rest of the day fishing at Tyler State Park. I caught a few nice bass on a walleye and worm, but didn't keep any of them. Better to let them grow and let someone else enjoy catching them. By lunchtime, I was tired and hot, so I went back to Staybridge, took a shower, and then went out for dinner. After deciding to myself what I wanted to do, I went to bed and actually had a very good night's sleep. It was Monday, and I spent the entire morning and most of the afternoon getting some things taken care of before heading home. It was about 7 p.m. when I walked into the house for the first time since I left Friday night. Ellie was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee. I stopped to grab a couple sandwiches and some chips, so I set them on the table in front of us. She looked at them and then at me and said, "I'm really not hungry, JD." "I know you've probably lost your appetite," I said, "but you really should try to eat a little. After you eat, we'll talk." She reluctantly took the sandwich and took a bite. I think the first bite whetted her appetite. So she ate greedily until she had eaten the whole sandwich and all the chips. When she finished, she looked at me and smiled, but then burst into tears. "Oh, JD, I'm so sorry," she said. and she began to sob uncontrollably. When she finally calmed down, she went through the entire cheater checklist. 1. It meant nothing to me, it was just sex. 2. I love you and I was never going to hurt you. 3. I was going to end it. 4. Part of the blame is on you because you were so obsessed and I was lonely, and so on and so forth. When she was done, I asked, "Are you done yet?" I know who, when, and why, so the rest is irrelevant to me. None of your statements mean anything to me. It was sex, but with someone other than me, so you shouldn't have done it. If you love me and you didn't want to hurt me, you shouldn't have done it. And yes, of course you were going to end it. Maybe someday. And finally, if you were lonely, why weren't you spending time with your father or sister? No. You needed to find this asshole so you wouldn't feel lonely. And that was my fault. My effort and obsession, as you put it, was to apprehend the kidnappers and rapists. And as it turned out, they were also murderers. I would say my efforts were not an obsession, but a devotion to duty and public safety. I continued, "Allison, I have no idea who you are anymore. The woman I married would never do what you did. She would never have allowed herself to be treated the way Billy treated you, and she would never have thought so poorly of me that she would have betrayed me like you did. I have no idea where the woman I married is now, but I'm sure she's gone forever. I'm sure I can never get her back. It's too late for that. I'm also afraid that the man you married doesn't exist anymore either. I used to believe that if you did the right things in life, everything would be okay. I lived my whole life by that principle, and look where it got me. I don't believe it anymore. I don't think it matters what we do now. So the man you married is gone too." Ellie wouldn't stop sobbing while I was telling her all this. I know it was hard for her to hear, but at the same time, it was the truth. It all came to me over the weekend as I struggled to figure out who I was going to be now. Oh, I knew, but I wasn't going to tell anyone. "So, Allison," I said, "I'm leaving." I put a folder of papers on the table. "These are the divorce papers. Let me tell you what's in them. First of all, you have something I want back. My great-grandmother's engagement ring that I gave you, I want it back. It's part of my family history, and I want to keep it in my family. I'm sorry to ask this because I really thought that someday we could pass it on to a daughter or son. But that's not going to happen to you anymore. So I want it back." Oh God, her sobs doubled in intensity. But I continued, "Please give me the ring now." She looked at me pleadingly, but I just shook my head and she reluctantly took it off her finger and held it out to me. "Secondly, Allison," I continued, "you know that I receive money from my family foundation. Some of it is in our accounts, along with our investments and savings, and I don't want you to have any part of it. I'll continue to get money from my trust, so I'll have everything I need." Sobbing again. "I intend to keep 100% of my pension," I added. "Since your IRA account has almost the same amount, I see no reason to divide my pension in any way. Finally," I said, "a house. As you know, we don't own the house. It's also part of my family trust, and it will continue to be. That trust was set up long before you and I were married and will be considered premarital property. You have no legal rights to the house or to any family trust. But that is why I'm giving you most of our money and investments. They're about equal in value to the house. In addition, you must, of course, leave this house within a week of today. I'm giving you a week to find another place to live and move all of your belongings out. Again, there are household items that were part of the family trust, and I expect you to leave them behind when you leave. You can guess what will happen if you don't." Of course, her sobs began again. "So, Allison," I sighed, "that's it. This is my offer. It is in no way negotiable. Have your lawyer look over the papers. Sign them or don't sign them, I really don't care. Either way, I'm out of here. Either way, I'm not going to be your husband anymore. Our marriage is over, either with a legal seal or practically, but it's over. If you sign the papers, give them to my lawyer and he'll finalize the process. Of course, by this time, she was inconsolable. There's one more thing we need to do before I go, I said. We're going for a ride. We walked out to my patrol car, and I told Allison to get in the back seat. She didn't know it, but I wanted her there so she couldn't get out. By this time, it was about 9 p.m., and the nightlife of the city was starting to bustle as always. We drove into the more crime-ridden part of town, and I pulled over to the curb near one of the hottest places to shoot up. There were a few women standing around, and I walked over and talked to them for a minute. Allison was still sitting in the back seat of the car, not realizing what was going on. I took one of the women by the hand and led her to the car. "Get in the back seat, Brenda," I said. She climbed in and sat next to Allison. As we drove away, I saw both women in the back seat looking at each other appraisingly. After we drove out of that part of town, I pulled into the parking lot at the mall and started talking. "Allison," I said, "this is Brenda. I'm going to ask her some questions, and I want you to just listen to what she has to say." "Brenda, what's your real name?" "JD, you know who I am." "I know, but I want you to just answer all my questions, Brenda." "Okay, I'm really Judy Parker." "Are you married?" She took a deep breath and said, "Not anymore." "You were married?" "Yes, to Ron Parker." "Who's Ron Parker?" "He's an assistant district attorney in town." "And why aren't you married to Ron Parker anymore?" "He divorced me for cheating on him." "And Brenda, who are you now?" "JD, you know who I am. I'm an escort. Are you happy now?" "No, Judy, I'm not happy. And I know you're not happy either. But why don't you tell Allison now how you became a cheater? Don't leave anything out." By this time, Allison's eyes had come out of their orbits and her mouth had opened. "Well," Brenda, Judy, began, "it all started when I met Billy Marconi at a society gala. He was handsome and so charming, and he really enjoyed being around me. My husband was so absorbed in chatting with the big shots at the party that he just seemed to ignore me, and Billy stepped in to make me feel good. We had a few drinks together, and before I knew it, we were on the patio, and he was already fondling my breasts. He was whispering things in my ear that I had never heard from a man before, how he would make me feel if he could be alone with me. I was vulnerable, and he took full advantage of that. But of course I didn't know that at the time. Before we went back inside, we agreed to have lunch the next day at the Carlton Hotel restaurant. Of course, you know what happened. We ended up in one of the rooms, and Billy had sex with me. I loved it. He was so attentive and so wonderful. That started the long road to where I am now. He started coming over to our house when Ron was away on business. Sometimes he would make love to me all day. Then he started bringing in some weed, then eventually some cocaine, and I got hooked. One day Ron caught us and threw me out. Billy took me in, and the long road to my demise suddenly became shorter. Before I realized what had happened to me, I was hooked on drugs, and Billy was selling me to anyone and everyone. Then he found someone new to work with and just sent me to his stable of girls. So that's where I am today. I saw Allison just shaking in the back seat. She was in shock. I asked Brenda, "How many girls does Billy have in the stable, Brenda?" She replied, "I know of 4 other girls who are pulling tricks for him right now. Every now and then one of them goes to the hospital or the cemetery and a new one shows up." "One last question, Brenda," I said. "What would you do to Billy Marconi if he were in the back seat with you right now?" "I'd gouge his eyes out with my fingernails and cut his balls off. I made a terrible mistake when I got involved with him and he ruined my life. Most days I just wish I was dead." "Well, Brenda," I continued, "one of these days you might get a chance to do it with Billy Marconi. He made love to the wrong guy this time." She smiled at me and said, "JD, if you ever give me that chance, you'll have a free girlfriend for life." Allison cringed and threw her a rather angry look. Too bad, Allison, I thought to myself, but I doubted I'd ever take Brenda up on her offer. I gave Brenda a couple $100 and asked if I could drive her home instead of going back to her place of employment. She thought that might be a good idea, so we drove to her house. After we dropped Brenda off, I drove Ellie back to the house. We sat in the patrol car for a few minutes before I let her out and gave her my closing speech. Allison. I still refuse to call her Allie ever again. So now you can see what a slippery slope you started on. You can see how you were so close to flushing your life down the drain. You can see where your actions were leading you. I did this last good deed for you because I loved the woman I married and because I don't want her to become another Brenda. We're done. But you don't have to be another Brenda. Take control of your life and be who you are meant to be. Build a good life for yourself. She started to say something, but I silenced her. Allison, I have nothing more to say to you. It's too late to say anything. From now on, your future is completely in your own hands. Goodbye. Now get out of the car. I opened the door to let her out, got back in the car, and drove off. My new life was about to begin soon, but that would have to wait. The end! Subscribe to my channel! Thank you!